In today's video, I have the latest news from around the league, including some trade rumors on teams like Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. We have a big update on Patrick Kane, some huge updates as well from the new Professional Women's Hockey League, and drama continues to play out in Russia regarding Flyers goaltender Ivan Fedotov. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL news and some trade rumors to take a look at today. Let's get things started with some news out of Russia, though. As I mentioned, drama continues to ensue here in this whole Ivan Fedotov situation. Of course, just to give you a very quick update and some background in case you're not familiar, Fedotov was signed by the Philadelphia Flyers to a one-year contract last year. Of course, when he tried to come over to North America to join the Flyers, he was detained, ended up having to stay in Russia, and apparently he had not completed his mandatory military time or whatever have you. Like, he was forced to stay in Russia for the season, was never able to join the Flyers, so they were able to push his contract forward a year, and it was going to be effective for this year. But after his service and everything was completed in Russia, instead of joining the Flyers, he was then signed in the KHL by CSKA. And they've made it clear that they don't feel his Flyers contract is valid, and they were going to have him play for them, and that was that. So the IIHF, of course, had to be the body to be the intermediary here, and they reviewed everything from both sides, and they actually agreed that the Flyers contract was valid before he was ever signed to the Russian contract to play in the KHL. However, we've heard, like, basically the last time we talked about this was that I believe it was Sergei Fedorov, the coach of the team and former NHL player, said that basically that Fedotov was going to be playing with them and that it didn't matter. They weren't really too concerned about what the IIHF said. And today they actually went forth with it. Their season obviously runs on a different schedule than the NHL, and Fedotov played today for CSKA. So officially, on the books in the regular season. So the IIHF is aware of this. They are going to be addressing it. I'm not sure exactly how and what they're planning to do. They've already ruled against Fedotov and the team. There's already been suspensions placed. I'm not really sure what more they can do. I don't know how more dramatic or ugly things are going to get here. I don't know if the Flyers are really pushing much further or if they've kind of washed their hands of this. I don't know. But at the end of the day here, this team in Russia, CSKA, is not abiding by the IIHF rules, and Fedotov is playing when he shouldn't be. So we'll have to keep our eyes on this situation. I'll be curious to see what the IIHF says or how they handle things moving forward. As I mentioned, it was a big day in the new PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. Of course, it was just a few days back when the league was officially confirmed and announced to be moving forward. September 1st was a big day. Today they announced the 6 GMs. A few days back we had learned who the 6 cities were going to be to form their original 6 franchises to start the new women's league. And now today we learned the GMs, and they also completed their draft lottery, and it's also the beginning of free agency. So like I said, the 6 franchises, there's 3 in Canada, 3 in the States. We got Boston, Minnesota, New York, and Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. The GMs for the 6 franchises were revealed. Boston's GM is Danielle Marmer. Minnesota's is Natalie Darwitz. New York is going to be run by Pascal Daou. Montreal is Danielle Sauvageau. Toronto, Gina Canesbury. And Ottawa, Michael Hirschfeld. So obviously all these GMs are hard at work today. The draft lottery was conducted. The lottery was now done, and the draft itself will take place on September the 18th. The Minnesota team ended up winning the lottery and getting the first overall pick. The order for the first round selections will be Minnesota, followed by Toronto, Boston, New York, Ottawa, and Montreal. However, it's a 15-round draft in a snake draft format, so ultimately Montreal will then pick twice to start round 2. So, in case you don't know, snake draft, essentially each round the picks go backwards, essentially. So you go for the first round, like I mentioned. Montreal picks last, so therefore they pick first in round 2. Then it goes back: Ottawa, New York, Boston, Toronto, Minnesota, etc. Ultimately, it's a good format. It usually works for a lot of fantasy leagues, run snake drafts, and we'll see. Now, free agency technically opened this afternoon here as well. However, as of the recording of this video, which is just a little bit after 7 o'clock Eastern time, there has been no signings here as of yet. It's rumored at this point that Canadian and captain for the national team, Marie-Philippe Poulin, is likely going to sign in Montreal. We heard that Abby Rock likely signs in New York. I believe Hillary Knight most likely goes to Minnesota. Jamie Lee Rattray likely goes to Ottawa. Sarah Nurse probably goes to Toronto. Those are all based on geographical locations on where their preferred places to play would be, as much as some of these girls are going to want to play in different, obviously I'm sure they're going to be quite happy to get a nice contract, to be paid a decent living wage to play professional hockey. I'm sure they're not going to want to uproot themselves if they don't have to. So obviously in free agency, in case you missed the other videos, each team is allowed to sign up to 3 players, and then all the other players will go into the draft. So they'll get 3 players, which will be a lot of your top talent via free agency, and then the next 15 players who join each franchise will be done via the draft. Anybody who's not drafted or signed as a free agent at that point will then become UFAs, and they can negotiate with all these teams for either contracts or professional tryouts. Each team will be required to bring a number of extra players into training camp to make sure there's healthy competition. I believe they're going to probably take as many as, I think, 28 players or something like that to camp. So you can look for probably anywhere from about an extra 10 players likely joining each franchise on tryouts. A few of them might get contracts right away, or they may have to go to camp first. But at the end of the day, it's been a very busy day here with the draft lottery and the GMs being named. Free agency is now open, and we're looking forward to seeing some of the first big name signings. Like I said, all kinds of great talent out there between Poulin and Knight, Natalie Spooner. You've got like Abby Rock, all kinds of names out there that are people are curious to see where are they heading, right? So clearly, I'm a little bit surprised we don't have any signings to announce tonight. I would suspect that there could be some come a little bit later once I'm done recording, or possibly into the weekend here. But certainly things moving forward and ramping up quickly in the new Professional Women's Hockey League. Now, as I mentioned, we have lots of other NHL news to talk about. Patrick Kane conducted an interview. Sounds like he's doing quite well. Obviously, Kane had hip surgery here in the offseason, but Patrick Kane has made it clear that he's feeling a lot better. Obviously, he said he's quite excited on how he feels on the ice and making a lot of good progress, which is great to hear. He said he could come back, probably push himself to come back early to start the year, but it just doesn't make sense to do that. He said it doesn't make sense to try to come back if he's even only 90%, whereas he can take a little bit of time, start the season a little bit late, and make sure he's at least 100% healthy and ready to go and feeling totally confident and like there won't be any setbacks. So clearly that makes a lot of sense. Kane also made it clear that even right now he's more than willing to entertain offers. He said if a team wants to pitch him and make an offer that he would get excited about and be in a situation that he'd be excited about, then he would be more than ready to listen. So I don't know that we're going to get a Kane signing anytime soon. I think we're probably still at least, I would guess, a few weeks from that, but it's hard to say. If a team calls him today and makes the right offer in a situation he's excited about, then clearly I would suspect he might take it. But at the same time, he knows he's going to be a little while getting on the ice. He can take his time, field offers. I'm sure he's aware a lot of teams don't have much for cap space. So I don't know if he's going to be too picky on money. We'll see, I guess, over time. We know he really liked it in New York and was upset that he wasn't 100% healthy to really give it as what he felt as his absolute best effort to try to make that work. I'm sure he'd like to go back there. I don't know if they can make that work or not, but be curious to see. I'm sure the Kane rumors and speculation of where he's going to end up will ramp up a little bit now that we know a little bit more about his health, where things stand, and we're, he's getting closer to being ready, and we're, in most cases, we're, 3 weeks or less away from training camp now, so I would think that shouldn't be too long before we have an idea where he's heading. Now, on to some different trade talk around the league. There was an Athletic article regarding the Oilers from author Alan Mitchell. talking a bit about a few things, but focus on goaltending. Obviously, it's a big year for the Oilers. A lot of people think it's kind of cup or bust. If they don't win a cup this year, there's going to be disappointment. We've seen this team, win multiple rounds in the playoffs over the last few years. We've seen, conference, second round, third round. What's it going to take? I mean, they're not going to have an easy path. Clearly, the Western Conference is, certainly got some good teams that they need to battle through, including the Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. Colorado's still a fairly strong powerhouse there as well. You've seen an up and rising team like Seattle. Lots of other teams that are going to be good too. So it's not like they're going to have a cakewalk by any means, but a lot of people feel the Oilers are good enough to win, and anything short of a cup will be a disappointment for them. But one thing to focus on is goaltending. Now, last year, if you look at his record, Jack Campbell, his win-loss record wasn't all that bad. But his save percentage and his goals against were not where it needs to be. He obviously would be the first to admit he had a very inconsistent, poor season. His first to start, his new contract with the Edmonton Oilers. Stuart Skinner surpassed him as a starting goaltender. I would imagine they're probably going to start the year with Skinner being the starter again, you would think. I think as a young rookie goaltender, Skinner might have been a little over his head come playoffs. Certainly probably get tired out too, not used to playing that much. So, I think another full year of Skinner will be huge for his development, and they need Campbell to be better. It's just that simple. But essentially what the article says is that if the Oilers and Campbell, especially Campbell, regardless of how the team's doing, if he is not good the first few starts, like this first few outings, look for Ken Holland to be looking to move him. Now, of course, you got a player making decent amount of money, has term, and not playing well. That's not easy to do. He's going to have to pony up, a nice little sweetener to make a team want to take that on. At the end of the day, though, he's going to be going looking for help in some capacity, bring in another goaltender and try to move Campbell. But again, like I said, not an easy task. The ultimate solution there is for Campbell to be better and to be the goaltender that they thought they were getting that came as advertised in Toronto. I mean, he might have had a few struggles in the playoffs, but I don't know if he can put all those playoff losses in Toronto on him. He was a pretty decent goaltender, but he did tend to be streaky. He would have a month or two at a time when he was really, really good, and then he would have a month where he was really subpar. That just seems to be the way things go for Campbell for some odd reason. But at the end of the day, they need him to be better. It's just that simple. And if he's not, and early on, look for the Oilers to make a move and find some other help at that position. Going to their provincial rival, the Calgary Flames, we know that they've got some players that have been in the rumor mill all offseason that we still don't have clarity on and know what the future is going to hold. But a big one there is Elias Lindholm. Of course, Hanifin, we've talked about it quite a bit as well. But Elias Lindholm did complete another interview over in his native Sweden and basically said that he's definitely open to staying, which I think we already kind of heard from enough sources that I don't think anybody doubts Lindholm's willing to stay. But between what we had previously heard from other NHL insiders, what we heard his teammate and friend Rasmus Andersson say in the 32 Thoughts interview with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman recently, I honestly think at the end of the day, this comes down to money. Like when it comes to Hanifin, the word was he wanted to go back and play in the States, okay? When it came to players like Tyler Toffoli, that he wanted to move on, right? But in Lindholm's case, it seems, in Backlund too, it's more about, he wants to see, can this team compete or not? But with Lindholm, I'm convinced now, it really is boils down to money. And his quote in this interview in Sweden says, now, of course, this is assuming everything's translated, right? Because sometimes when interviews are done in other languages, sometimes you do have to be a little cautious. But based on the translation, it appears to say that he's open to staying, but there's a lot that we have to agree on, and that his agent and the general manager will have to handle that. That insinuates basically money. There's a lot they have to agree on, like how much money and for how many years. Clearly, we're talking about contract. We're not talking about how competitive the team is. We're not talking about who the head coach is. We're not talking about wins and losses here. This is about dollars and cents, in my opinion, and I've thought that for some time. We've heard that Craig Conroy, the new GM of the Flames, has had a sizable contract extension on the table for Lindholm, but I've heard that it's only in the 8 to 8.5 range. It sounds like it's going to have to come up to at least 9.5, closer to 10 to get something done, which might be a little bit too steep for the Flames, which is why I think at this point, at least, unless his numbers and requests and demands change, I think right now we're trending towards a trade. But like I said, he could kind of come down on his offer or what he's looking for. Maybe his side of the equation changes a bit, and maybe they get something done. But right now, things don't appear to be trending in a good direction, in my personal opinion. Vancouver is another team to watch. Another article I was looking at from the Hockey News, talking about how certain players, especially guys like Brock Besser and Anthony Beauvillier, who are also not only trying to bounce back and have good seasons for the team and to help the team get off to a better start, but they're also playing for contracts. And those are types of players that are going to be under some of the most pressure, especially Besser, to perform and to become that scorer that they've been waiting for a long time. Now, I know Besser's been through a lot personally in the past couple of years, but it's time to be the goal scorer and winger that they really hoped that and thought he could be all along. And if now that he's entering the final year of that contract, if he's not having a great start and the team's not having it well, regardless of how Besser does, I think if the team starts slow again, you're bound to see at least one big trade early on to shake things up. And I think Brock Besser is your prime candidate. They're not going to want to trade Pettersson, as I mentioned before. I know there's a lot of bit of uncertainty over his future based on his comments. I don't think the team needs to worry too much right now. The only time I think Vancouver needs to be really concerned about Pettersson is if they have a bad year. I mean, he's tired of losing. He wants to be on a team that's competing for playoffs and having a chance to win a cup. And if he feels they're really far away from that after all this time, he's probably not going to want to be part of a longer, deeper rebuild. And I don't entirely blame him. I understand where that's coming from. So at the end of the day, Besser's a prime guy, been there a long time. If he's not, if the team's still not getting it done and they need to shake things up, he's there. They could retain a little bit of money, ship him off to another team, and we'll see. But, the Canucks are going to be a very interesting team to watch. The first 20 games of the season are going to tell a lot and certainly dictate that you can't win the cup in October or November, but you can lose it, and you can lose your playoff spot. And you can also, kind of dictate how your season's going to go. And if they get up too much behind early, I suspect we're going to see a big sell-off of players. That's my opinion on the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll see here. Montreal, reports from TVA Sports in Quebec are indicating that their sources are telling them, but regarding the three-headed monster goaltending situation, we already knew that Samuel Montembeault, who was already told that he was not going to be moved, that they were quite pleased with him and they want him to stay. Well, according to TVA Sports, their sources are saying that Jake Allen has also been told the same thing by Habs management. So kind of leaning more and more, which is what we thought anyway, that Casey DeSmith is the more likely player to go. At this point, if they can't find a taker, they do have Price's contract to be deep into LTIR. They may have to carry the three guys for a little while, but it looks like Casey DeSmith is still the prime target and candidate to be moved. I mean, if they have to play him a bit to showcase him, maybe they'll have to do that. We'll see. Teams will be going into training camp here, getting an idea what their goaltending situation's like. Maybe there's injuries. There's bound to be some unexpected things pop up through training camps. There always is with certain positions, goaltending being one of them. There's always a bunch of goalies on waivers too, so we'll be curious to see what happens. But Montreal obviously would prefer to trade him, considering that he was part of the package that came back in the Jeff Petrie trade. They didn't pick him up with the intention of just putting him on waivers to let another team take him. They picked him up because they thought they could get assets for him, right? So this is all about asset management with Ken Hughes. But it sounds like they're willing to move forward longer term, at least for the next little while, with Montembeault and Allen, and kind of reevaluate from there. Casey DeSmith seems to be the guy that's most likely to go at this point, but it won't be shocking if they do start the season and do carry three for at least a little while. But let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.